No, Varsha, it is for academic batch. You need to leave this class in case you are a general test taker and join in the other link. Okay. Is there anyone from the general batch? Now, this is for the academic students. Okay, just keep that in mind. So anyone having any questions so far? Anything at all? About the task on or whatever we've discussed so far? Okay, so far no one has asked any questions. So I think, okay, typing. I'll wait. Of course, sticking to a sentence or tense is really important. If you would be just sometimes using present tense, the other time you would be past tense, you would be using a past tense. Definitely, it would not be right for your grammatical accuracy. Okay. So yes, you need to stick to one tense. This is really important. And look at this one. Let's say this is a process. Can we use a past tense for this process? Whoever is seeing it on the screen can mention Y or N. Can we use a past tense for this particular task? No, right? So because we use past tenses when something happened in the past and we are telling it like a story or something happened at a certain point. And that is the reason we have sometimes years like that. Okay. So they are giving us a specific time in the past. Okay. That is the reason we would be having some years in the charts and graphs as well. So now let's start the class. I think it's time that we started. So now let's talk
Recording in
about
progress.
charts and the graph. So basically, all things we discussed, those are same only. The structure is going to be same only. Okay, the structure of any task is always going to remain same. Whether you're writing a process, you're writing a map, you're writing pie chart, you're writing a table, you're writing any line or a bar. It does not matter. The structure is always going to be the same. Structure being this one, where you first always start with an introduction, where you paraphrase the question, rewrite the question in your own words, okay? And then you move to the overall part, where you talk about the main highlights of the task or the main trend that you are seeing in the task, okay? That is the overall of the graph. And then in the body paragraphs, you start talking about main features. Only difference between the overall and the body paragraph is that here you don't mention any data. You will be supporting the main features and explanation of the main features using data. Okay. So you need to divide your task for coherence, especially. So some part of the task would be discussed here, while the other part of the task will be discussed here. Okay. This is the structure we will be following for all the types of tasks that we have. Okay. Okay. Yes, Varun, you are having a question. Can you please ask?
Ma'am, yesterday we did a map and
Yes, we did.
a map and a process. The notes of that class weren't sent. I just wanted to inquire about that.
Which group are you part of?
Ma'am, I'm part of this group only.
No, no. What I'm saying, the name on WhatsApp.
Just it's 7 p.m. Ielts 18 March 2020. 2024.
I did share that. If I did not, don't worry, I'll share the file. Though it's not, it is not a different, it is a different file. I'll share it, okay?
Actually, ma'am, we get a matlab, ki idea of what we did yesterday, na, to
Yes, yes.
complete the homework. That's why I
Sure,
wanted.
sure. No, no,
Oh, thank
obviously
you, ma'am.
notes are necessary. Yes, yes. Those are for you only. I might have skipped that group when I was sharing. Anyone else having any questions? Or are we ready to start with the task? So basically, we have discussed the structure that we are going to be following. This is also going to be remain same. Only difference is going to be how you will be analyzing your task. But because analysis is a really important part of this task, okay? Analyzing. The task. So now when you will be analyzing your task, what you need to do, you need to just write some of the things that you are saying. Okay, couple of things. First is always going to be the timeline. It is really important, okay? So basically we are talking about tenses. You need to identify whether it is past, whether it is present, or it's a future one. Okay, so for the past, let's say if I'm writing here, let's say 1990. Now, which tense would I need in order to explain the trends here? Which tense would I need? Past. We are not talking about passive or active or anything at all. We just are talking about the main timeline here. Which tense would we need? Past, right? Now, let's say your task is say 2024. Then which tense would you need? Present. Now, you have to answer the question, this one. Let's say I'm talking about certain trends that happened in 1990. And if I use a present tense for that, is it all right? Definitely not. Your grammatical accuracy would be getting impacted, and that is 25% of your writing score. Okay. Now, let's say your task is talking about this one. Which tense would you need here? Future, 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 future. Except for future, is there any other tense we can use? Obviously, the clear indication is we need to use a future tense. Is there any other tense out of these that we can use? Present continuous. Present tense can be used. So it can be a combination of present plus future, because just by using a future tense, you can't really use it. Okay. You would need present passive, present simple passive. Okay. So, for example, you would be using phrases like these. Okay. For example, it is predicted to increase, let's say. If you're seeing a trend, it is predicted to increase. It is estimated. It is estimated to go up, right? Or in the, you could use this one, it will increase. Okay, you will use this one, that is, it will increase. So here you would need a combination of present plus future tenses. Okay, even this one can be, it has been predicted that, it has been predicted that. Now, which one is it? This is present perfect. Perfect passive. Okay. So you need these combination in case you are attempting a task that is talking about future. Are we clear, everyone? Is there anyone having any problem or any questions so far about how to recognize the timeline? Is there anyone? Now imagine another scenario. I am asking you to imagine, but it actually sometimes happens. Let's say there is no mention of any year in your task. What would you do? If, let's say, there is no mention of any year in your task, what would you do? Present, present. Okay. Hmm. And how would you know that you need to use the present tense for that? Why not any other tense? So you need to read the question statement and try to recognize the timeline. Okay. I would say 90% of the time, 90% of the time, I would say you would use a present tense. Okay. But then again, in case there is an indication of a certain time, or maybe from the tense itself, you can recognize that, okay, the tense has been, maybe constructed in a past tense. Sorry, the question statement has been constructed using a past tense. You would be using a past tense. Are we clear now? Can you recognize the timeline? So again, it is a very important note that always stick to one timeline or the tenses according to what is required, in the task, according to the question statement. Avoid unnecessarily sorry, mixing tenses. Okay. Now I'm emphasizing it a lot, actually. Reason being because this actually happens. Though I'm not evaluating tasks these days, okay, we have a very active team right now, okay. But in the past, there have been many tasks that I've evaluated where the students were not actually sure about the timeline. What would they do? One sentence would be in the past tense while the other would be in the present tense, okay. And you are affecting your accuracy, grammatical accuracy, which is 25% of your score. So that is the first step you will be taking. Since I am discussing here, it is taking definitely longer, but when you will be doing it on your own, it would hardly take a couple of seconds, not more than that. I would say not even a minute. Okay. Now, anyone having any questions? Anyone at all? Why you're in the chat, even if you don't have a question, okay, it is all right not having a question, but just give me certain indication, okay? Because I would not want you to have a doubt when you are taking the class. Now, once this part is sorted, now what you will be doing? Very good. Very good. So once this part is sorted, you would be moving to the next part. That is about data. Whatever data that has been given to you. Okay. Just like the timeline, it can also be sometimes tricky. Okay. You need to identify the data. Now, data could be anything. It sometimes can be percentage. Majority of the time, you would be getting a percentage, a proportion of something. Sometimes it can be currency. Now, currency can be anything, dollars, pounds, right? Any of those can be there. Measurement units can be there, such as cm, km, right? Those can be there, okay? You just need to recognize them and then answer the question. Once you have identified what data has been given, ask yourself just one question. What does this data represent? You need to ask this question, okay? So is it, let's say you have a task which is talking about, let's say, food, clothes, and it is talking about maybe electricity, so and so forth. Okay, you have these kind of items. Okay, Then you have like, question statement telling you, people spending money on the following. I'm just writing, obviously you will not be getting question statement like that, just to make you understand. Okay. Now, if you are not asking yourself question in one sentence, you would say proportion of people, percentage of people buying food. Okay. Sometimes you would be saying proportion of food. Okay. That is not the right way of doing it. Okay. So sometimes you would be saying, let's say 20% of people buy food. And you would also be the same person telling 20% of the food. If you're looking at this statement, let's say this is your question statement, which of these sentences would be the right one? Which one would be the right one? First or second? First. 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 Yeah, right. Okay. So first one would be the right one. It's just that because you recognize that. Now, you might have recognized that at the beginning of when you start the task. Okay. But in the next sentence itself, you would be talking about, okay, percentage of food. Okay. That is not the right way of approaching it at all. Okay. So you need to make sure that you are not mixing once you're saying that proportion of people, the other time you're saying proportion of food. It does not make sense because you can't be the same person just making these kind of switches. Okay. Are we clear what steps are to be taken before you start writing a task, especially charts and graphs? Are we good to start writing a task? Perfect. So now we are left with these tasks basically. So we are done with these two. Okay. So we are left with these basically. Okay. Now what we are going to be doing first, one we would do combined chart. Okay. Any of them can be done combined. Whatever task would be done in a combination that would not be discussed individually. Okay. And one of these tasks, two of these tasks then would be discussed individually. Did you understand the strategy, how we will be going about the classes? Today we will discuss one task, okay? Any of them just one task. During the next session, one task would be discussed in a combination and one task would be discussed individually, okay? Now I'm going to be starting with the task. Let me just bring one on screen and then we are going to be start writing. Okay. Is it visible, the task? Is it clear enough? Very good. So once you have a task, let's make ourselves familiar with what our task is asking. So let's start. So our question is saying the graph below shows the average monthly changes in the prices of three metals during 2014. This is what our question is saying, right? So now look at this one and tell me what is the timeline that we have in this task. Look at this question and tell me what is the timeline that we are going to be using. Let me just write it, then I'll be, yes. Which timeline do we need? Past. Very good, right? Now, because we clearly have this 1 year, 2014, and indication is really strong that we need to use a past tense, right? So we need a past tense, right? Now, once that is sorted, again, do not bother about this one where the comparison is relevant. Make a comparison. In case you think a comparison does not make sense, you don't need to make a comparison, okay, unnecessarily, okay? So you need to make comparisons only when they are necessary or they make sense, okay? Now, once that part is done, now we are going to be looking at data. What data you see in this one? What data do we have? Look at this task, okay? It is saying average monthly changes in prices of copper, nickel, and zinc, right? Percentage change in price compared with previous month. That is what it is saying. Now, what data do we have? You have to recognize the data, the unit first. Is there anyone who has recognized the data? Prices of these metals. Okay. What is the data? Just data. Then we would talk about what does graph, percentage, Deepika good, price. But we need to just recognize data. Basically, we have percentage. Okay, we have percentage. Because data, you just need to recognize what data do we have. Do you have percentage? Do you have any currency? Or do you have any imaginary? You just need to recognize that only. We have identified the data, we have percentage. Now you need to ask yourself a question. Now you guys would be telling me, now what does this percentage is representing? What does this represent? This particular percentage that we have, what does it represent? What is it representing? Price, yes. Percentage of price. For price. Okay. Grishma, really good. Good. Okay. So basically, it is not only for price, it is change in price. Okay. So it is basically for change that took place in the prices. Okay. So it is clearly saying percentage change in the price compared to the previous month. Okay. So they are talking about change in the price. For example, whatever change happens, for example, something was 50 rupees and then it was suddenly maybe 100 rupees or something. You just need to identify how much percentage increased in the price. Okay. That is what they are talking about. Okay. Now, in case if I write question sentence like this, let's say 2% of nickel. I'm just writing it. You tell me, is it the right sentence to be used? If I say 2% of nickel, would that be the right sentence? No, no, no. Absolutely right. Now, what you guys give me the right structure here. What right sentence structure can I use here in order to make it right? What can be the right sentence structure for that one? Nickel price changes by 2%. 2% change in the price of nickel. Right. Very good, Madhav and Rakesh. Okay. Because you need to make sure you are on the right path. Since it is a change that is happening in the price itself, you would talk about the percentage and would include the detail of the price change. Okay. If in case I make a sentence like this is absolutely a wrong sentence. Now, are we clear about everything? Shall we start writing the task? Because I think we are in the right place that we should write the task now. Y or N in the chat? Should we start writing the task? But before we do that, make yourself familiar with the task first a bit. Because till now, what we've done, we've just looked at the question statement. We looked at the data, whatever data we have. Now just look at this first. What they're talking about, they're talking about, these lines that we have, the trends and all. First, let's write the paraphrasing part, the introduction part. Then we will talk about how to find the trends for the overall. Okay. Now give me your introduction. You guys would be writing the introduction first. I need to check how you would be writing the introduction. Question is saying the graph below shows the average monthly change in the prices of three metals during 2014. That is your question. Now, how would you rephrase this question? Take 1 or 2 minutes and then rephrase the question. Then I will also do it. So I'm also going to be starting writing it. Okay, I'm going to start writing it so that I can also check yours when you will be mentioning it in the chat. So first I will start the task by specifying the type of task I have. Okay, so I would say the given line graph. Okay, the given line graph. Now I just need to paraphrase the question. So I would say I can use word show is already there. I can say depict, I can say display, I can say illustrate. I have a lot of words for that, but let me use depict here. Depict. So they are saying that depicts actually because it is singular. Okay. So depicts the changes in the prices of copper, nickel, and zinc. And zinc, then we can mention that every month in 2014. In 2014. So the given line graph depicts the changes in the prices of copper, nickel, and zinc every month in 2014. Because we are seeing all the 12 months, right? So that's the reason every month. So Rakesh is saying the mentioned graph displays the trend of a percentage change in the price of three types of materials. Okay, you can specify the material that we are talking about. So since we have only three of them here, it is absolutely right to write them instead of just mentioning three metals, because you know the words are not very long. Okay, when you have a longer list, then definitely you need to avoid that. Okay, so I was comfortable writing three words instead of repeating the word metals. I just mentioned what metals we were talking about. Okay, so that is one way of doing it. And percentage change in the price, that is also all right, Rakesh. And also specify the year. Okay, make sure when you are writing the task, okay, so when you're writing the task, make sure you're including every little detail from the question statement, especially this the timeline, the for example, these metals and all. These are the important pieces of information that we need to include. Anyone else who has made the question introduction? This is a good opportunity I'm giving you. In case you are not writing, you can just mention no so that I can just start with the overall task. Let's not waste time just writing. Sure, Harpreet. I'll check yours once you will be writing. Now let's start and recognize the trends here. So it is saying here, look at this one. First of all, we have three things: copper, nickel, and zinc. Okay. Now see how these lines are fluctuating a lot, right? Fluctuating a lot. Don't you think we have a lot of data? We have total 12 months that we are going to be talking about. Lot of data is there. Okay, so that could be a problem in a line graph when you're writing, that how to handle that kind of task. Though it looks really short, but you are having a lot of details here. Okay, 12 month and you are having a lot of different trends. Okay, first how you will be using the information in body paragraphs. Okay, two of them will be there in one body paragraph. One body paragraph will be having these two, and one body paragraph will be having only one of the metal. Okay, now use one paragraph, I mean first body paragraph, for that metal that is fluctuating a lot. Now out of these three, which metal is fluctuating the most? Where are you seeing the most fluctuations? Where are you seeing the most fluctuations? In the year 2014, otherwise it's fine. Don't say above, okay? Say given, okay? Otherwise fine. Nickel, right? So nickel would be One we can talk about in one body paragraph. In the other body paragraph, we will talk about copper and zinc, okay? Because they are showing relatively less fluctuations, okay? That is how we will. Now, the same information we can mention in the overall of the task. When you're writing overall, they are saying overall. When you look at this task, what overall are you seeing? What you are spotting in this task? And that is called the overall of the task. And that is information we are going to be using now. Okay. So now we have identified one thing especially, that we need to separate nickel from zinc and copper. One paragraph would be dedicated to nickel, and body paragraph 2 would be having information about zinc as well as copper. That is what we are going to be doing. Now, before we write body paragraphs, we are going to be starting with the overall, and the same information that I have just discussed verbally, I am also going to be writing it on the in the overall of our task. Okay. So you can also write your overall so that I can check it. Again, it is not necessary that you write it. It is just, it's a good opportunity for you to get your task evaluated right away. Okay. So now let's start. Okay. So we would say overall. Most applications were seen. So if you see this one, it is here, then it is coming down, again a dip, and then a small fluctuation, and then it is staying almost same at the end. When we talk about zinc, zinc is also going up a bit, then small change, again going down, little bit of stability, and then again going up. So some fluctuations are also there. But when we talk about copper, it is going down at a quite gradual speed, and then again a small dip, and then some stability, again some stability, right? So it's not showing much changes. So I'm going to be grouping that information. There is no change in July to September month. Let me see, July to September. That's a good one. That's a good one, actually. Let me see. We're seeing in prices of nickel by copper three of the metals same as for copper and zinc. Yeah, that is a good trend that has been noted. I will mention it in the overall so that we don't have to specifically talk about it in the body paragraphs. Let's talk about it in the this. Okay. Sure. Relatively more stability in the beginning and the end of the video. All three metals showed exhibited similar or stable we have July, almost July to September, right? September in 2000. Okay, let me just start it with that because it is about all three, and this is the other trend we are mentioning. Okay, so this is what we are writing. I was not plan on writing the first line, but I think it was a good trend that was recognized by one of the students, I think, Bhumi did it. And that is why I mentioned it. So now we have this trend. All three metals exhibited a stable trend from July to September in 2014. Most fluctuations were seen in the prices of nickel, and I think we can also include uh, zinc here, right? Nickel and zinc, because if you see comparatively, because we are making a small comparison here, right? So if you see zinc is also like, it's going up and then little bit of stability and then going down. Though the price change is definitely lower than what we are seeing for nickel, but it is also going up and down a lot. Fluctuations are just going up and down, right? So we can say that most fluctuations were seen in the prices of nickel and zinc, while copper showed relatively more stability in the beginning and the end of the period. So we are not talking about anything what is happening in the center and the middle of the period. We are specifically talking about in the beginning, it's little gradual. Also at the end of the period, it is also little gradual. We are not talking about the middle. Are we fine with the trend that we have written, the trends that we have written in the overall? Anyone having any question about the overall of the task? Y or N in the chat at least. Try to understand. Okay, I'm not seeing your faces. Okay, so I just need this indication where I can't recognize your facial expressions or anything. Okay, you're fine with that, right? So I need those cues where I can just read and just move to the next part. When I will be on the body paragraph, you would be asking me what happened on the overall. Can you please tell me about that particular sentence? How we write that? How we are supposed to be changing that? Those things will be there. Okay. If any question is arising right now in your mind, don't hesitate asking. I keep on asking it again and again, okay? Just to make sure we are on the same page. Now let's start with the body paragraphs. As I mentioned, the division has been so far. First, we will talk about nickel. Then we will move to the other two metals that we have. Okay. Now let's start with the nickel. Let's identify the trends. As I mentioned, we have 12 months. It doesn't mean that you would be eliminating the data or you would be just writing whatever you think is the right one. No, identify the trends. Now we will talk about this point. Initial and the last point is always important. You can't really eliminate that. Okay. So in the overall of the task, always include the first at the beginning and the end of the period. So these two trends are definitely going to be there. Now let's see what we are going to be taking from the middle. Since the drop is happening, we will talk about this one, right? This is first trend, this is the second trend. Why we are not talking about this one? Because though it is going down even further. Then why not talk about the actual point where it was much lower than the previous one? Okay, it makes sense to do that. Okay, so we will talk about this point to this point. Then we can talk about, I'm not sure whether I will be talking about this or not. Right now I'm taking one trend, two trend, and this one is going to be my third trend. Then I would maybe talk about this stability and eventually this point and eventually the last point. Okay, so right now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 trends that we will mention about nickel when I will be explaining. Are we clear which trends we are going to be talking about? We will basically talk about January and December for sure. We will talk about March, June, and then we will talk about October. No, okay. Now it doesn't mean that I will not talk about other months. I will just talk about them in the span of time, like the period, okay? Not every just month by month. Okay, let's start. Then I think it will make more sense what I'm planning to do. So let's start with that. In 2004, sorry. In 2014. Now we will talk about in 2014, we will start with the January. What is happening in January? So tell me what data are we seeing what is the price of nickel in January? What is the price change? 6%, right? And after that, it is going down and down. And we are recognizing another trend, this one that is happening in March, right? So what we can talk about here? What we can mention here? What number can we use here? 6 to 1%, right? Then it is going in the minus trend, right? Minus trend, again, it is remaining in the minus trend only, but going a little bit up, and then eventually it is again at 1 point. Came down to 1 from 6, right? We can say that. Let's start writing. Just give me a second. Just give me 1 second. I'll be back, okay? I'm just taking a water break. We are going to be starting, okay? Let me just fetch water for myself. Yeah, let's start writing, okay? So now we will start from January only. So the price change in nickel 6% in January, right? So this is how it is starting. Now we are going to be talking about how it went down, okay? And it to 1% in March, right? So this one trend has been mentioned. Now I'm not going to be talking about this because eventually the fall is happening only. So better would be if we talk about this particular trend that is happening in June, right? Now let's include this particular trend. We would say that it showed, we can say a further maybe a drop, a further drop, or we can say that maybe, okay, let me give you one thing, that another dramatic drop to, that is minus 3%. Sorry. Okay, so now here, if you see drastically, we have used it as an adverb. Here we are using it as an adjective. Okay, dramatic drop. Another dramatic drop. So it will show you, for example, as I mentioned, you already don't have a lot of, there is not much you can do with vocabulary because it is not the task one. So you can show your lexical source by using these kind of words that are talking about degrees, they are talking about changes, okay? Dramatically, it would show the examiner that you can use a different form of the same word only, okay? So it shows a good lexical source, and that is what you can do. Now, once you have mentioned the change that happened in -3, and it is happening in which one? In June. June. It has been mentioned, and now we are going to be talking about how it went up. So for that, we are going to be using one linker, that is however, because it talks about piece of opposite information. Okay, because first it was going down, now it is going up. So we are going to be talking about that. The price, or we can say the change, let's say the price or the percentage picked up. Now, from which month it is picking up? From which month it is picking up? From basically July, right? From July and then to September. From July to September. Okay, so this is what you can do. You don't need to mention every month individually. You can use this range like the way I'm using. Okay, September, and then we can say that. And what are we getting here? It is -1%. At -1%, picked up from July to September at 1 this. And then let's talk about how it went down again, a small dip. Then it is at 1%. Okay, let's talk about that. And again, it hit a new low. And what is it? The low that we are seeing it at -2%. Sorry. That's 2%. And it is happening in the month of October, right? We don't need to specify that. We can just talk about the end of the period, okay? Before touching, I'll explain it, okay? Before touching, let me just write it. Before touching 1% in the end of the period. Okay, so we are now talking about the end of the period, okay? Or because we have already used period part here, we can say by the end of the year. Okay, at the end of the year. So now understand this last sentence, really important. So the percentage picked up from July to September at 1%. Till now, are we following? From July to September, it is at 1%. Are we following this? Okay. And again, it hit a new low at minus, okay, at -2%, right? 2% dip we are seeing in October, right? And we are not specifying when it happened. We just mentioned, okay, it hit a new low before it reached 1% at the end of the year. Okay, we did not mention December, we did not say November, we did not say September, because all these things, especially from here, all these are happening at the end of the year in the last 3-4 years, right? October, November, and December. In 3 months, these things are happening, right? And that is the reason you can mention them in that way. So we did not mention every month individually. We just took the range and mentioned that. Are we clear? Anyone having any question? This is the sentence structure that I also used the other day when I was writing a process or maybe a map. I think I highlighted. Yeah, before this, right? So what we are talking about, okay, we don't go, just let me show you what I'm saying. We don't talk about this part, basically. We are not talking about this part. We are saying before this thing happened, we had this point as well. Okay, so we try to mention this part and this part simultaneously. Okay, we are talking about the relation that they are showing, and that is the reason we are using before. So before it reached 1%, it had been at -1% for these, sorry, for -2%. Okay. Anyone having any questions about this paragraph? Then we'll be moving to another, the next body paragraph where we'll talk about the rest of the two metals. Okay. Now let's talk about the next two metals. And for that, let's start with the zinc first. So if we see zinc is showing quite a bit of fluctuations. Sorry. So this one is down. Zinc is showing first it is 1 and then it is 3. These two trends will be mentioned. This trend January and obviously the last December, this will be mentioned. Then this trend is important. Do we need to mention anything about this and this, March or something? Or shall we just directly mention about June? You tell me, if you will be approaching this task, would you be mentioning anything after of anything in between February and June, or would you be directly going to June? So it should be January, February, and then it should be June. Okay. 3 trends have been there so far. Again, almost same. A small dip. I'm not sure whether I'll be talking about it or not, but we will talk about this. 1 or 2 sentences, we will be done with zinc. We don't need to write a lot for zinc. Okay. Only number of words that will be increasing the length of the sentence. That would be because we will be writing the name of the months. Okay. Let's start with that. Okay. Okay. We would say that the change and the price of zinc. And it was 1%, then 3%. It was 1%, and then it showed a dip, right? It was 1% in January. It was 1% in January, and it went up to 3% in March. Right? So we have mentioned that. Then we are going to be talking about the change that happened in the next. We will say this one. That is okay, 1% here, and then minus 1% for the rest of the time, and then this. Let's talk about this part here. It was near about 1% in we are saying near about, okay, understand, which means we can include the months such as near about, sorry, it is February here. February, all that was near about 1% in from to May, and last 2 months we are saying from November to December. The change was close to almost 1%, minus 1% in the mid of the year. Right now, what we did, we just mentioned the main changes. First, we talked about the January part. In January, it was close to 1%. Then it went up to 3% in February. Then we used although. Although is for contrast, right? It was near about from March to 1% in March to May. It is close to 1%, and then even at the end of the period, it is close to 1% only. That is the reason we are saying close to. Okay, we are saying close to, nothing else. Okay, close to 1%. The change was close to in the mid of the year. So if you see around just minus 1% only, October. We can also specify that. We can also specify this particular. I just mentioned the mid part of the year. Are we having any question? Say for the rest of the months. Okay, we can say for the rest of the month. That is also completely all right if you want to use that. Okay. Okay, Harpreet is saying, can it be in 2000 the price of 6% observed in nickel on January month and it suddenly fell? Instead of say suddenly, I would say the drastic would be better, right? It sudden or you could say a sudden change, it would look just better because suddenly is for situations like like human like situations, but we are talking about trends. Okay, so now we are talking about the last one, that is about copper. So for that we can use one that by contrast, we can use on the other hand, we can use on the contrary. Let's use on the contrary. Because if you see, again, we are talking about this part only, how copper did not show as many fluctuations as the other two metal showed. Okay, so let's talk about this. So here, if you see at 2, it is starting just very gradual change and it is just close to 1%. Then again, gradual change and then again close to 1%. Again, it is going down again, almost close to 1%, right? So more or less, it stayed close to 1% only. The change was not as big. So let's talk about this. There was consistency in the price of copper. Since it was either around 2% or 1%, right? So because if you're seeing the uptrend, it is 2%, right? Here as well at the beginning, it is showing almost close to 2%. So the biggest high that it has achieved has been only 2% only. So it has been either close to 1% or 2%. That is what we are mentioning. Okay. We can say for the major part of 2014. Okay. Whereas if you want to mention a small contrast, okay, we can say that whereas it stayed close to, no, we have already used it. Can you give me some word that we can talk about, such as just like close to or something? Any word we can use here? Stayed, around has been used. Around has been used. It stayed almost. Almost is right word. Almost, if we talk about this one, 0.5, would that be the right word to use? If we say the low here from March to June, I'm talking about this March to June trend, right? It is down this particular 1% line. So from March to June, right? Stayed almost 0.5% from March to June. Right? And that is how you're done with that. Surround would not be the right one. Okay, surround would not be the right word. Stayed almost 0.5% from March to June. Okay, now I specifically took this task just to make you know that in case you're having a lot of details to handle, this is what you do, because the examiner is just going to be checking how you are handling the communication in case you're getting that kind of report writing. It does not mean that, because the question is clearly saying this, selecting and reporting, you need to select trends. It does not make sense if this point dot is there, this dot is there, and this dot is there. I don't need to talk about every dot here. I need to recognize trend. Though I'm seeing this dot at this in February as well, but it does not change the fact that it is going down on, right? Whether it is 4% or it is 1%, the trend is that it is still going down on. Here as well, it is not much of stability because the change is still going down only. Okay. And that is what you need to recognize. This is how you do the task. Anyone having any questions? Then we will talk about the sentence structures that have been used here. Because grammar being 25% of your score, let's talk about variety of sentence structures that we have used. Okay, let's start from the introduction. The given line graph depicts the changes in prices of copper, nickel, and zinc every month in 2014. This is how we rephrase the question. Overall, all three metals exhibited a stable trend from July to September in 2014. Most fluctuations were seen in the prices of nickel and zinc, while copper showed relatively more stability. So we are not saying exactly that copper prices were stable only. The change was stable only. We are saying relatively more stable. Okay, it was relatively. If you talk about the comparison, then it was stable definitely in the beginning and the end of the period. In 2014, the price change in nickel was 6% in January, and it fell down drastically to 1% in March. Now you are looking at this sentence. Tell me what sentence structure we are seeing here. Which sentence structure has been used? Which sentence structure is it? You don't have to specifically learn a different kind of sentence structure differently. You can just use the same sentence structure that I'm using. Compound. Very good, Surya Kumari. This is a compound sentence. When you're using a conjunction to connect two sentences, you're using a compound sentence. Now, this sentence structure, it showed another dramatic drop to this. Which sentence is it? Which structure is it? Complex. Why is it complex? It is clearly simple sentence. It showed another drop. It is a simple sentence, not a complex one, not a compound one. Okay, it is a simple sentence. Now the percentage picked up from this, and again hit a new low before touching this one. So what tense are we using here? This is a combination. So basically we're using a compound sentence. Okay, got it. Bhumi, that was right one. So we are using basically a compound sentence, but we are using a little bit of complexity at the end. Okay, small result we are showing at the end. So adverbial clause, and plus we are using a compound sentence here. Now let's see the next one. The change in the prices of zinc was 1% in January, while it went up to this. Now which sentence structure is this? Compound, simple, or complex? Complex. Complex. Yes. Whenever you're using while, you're always making a sentence that is a complex one. So just learn to use while, you are already making one complex sentence. Now, although it was near about 1% from March to May, and from November to December, the change was close to minus in the mid of the year. Now, which sentence structure is it? Simple, compound, or complex? Which sentence structure is it? Simple, compound, or complex? Complex, compound. Mention your answers, whether it's complex or compound. Complex. Yes, it is a complex sentence. Because any sentence made with although, you are always making a complex sentence. Again, learn to make a sentence with although, you know how to make a complex sentence. On the contrary, a linker. So far, we have used these two evident linkers. Otherwise, we are doing linking in between the sentences, because that's a natural way of linking the information. While, using and, using although. Natural way of using connectors in your sentences. Okay. There was consistency in the price of copper, since it was either around 2% or for this and this. Now, this sentence structure, what is it? Which sentence structure is it? Let me tell you the options: compound, complex compound, or complex. Compound, complex compound, or complex. Yes, complex compound sentence. Okay, very good. So because we are starting with this, then we used since. Since shows a complex sentence, but we also used a linking of either or. Okay, and this is basically for a compound sentence. But then again, we also used a contrast using whereas. Whereas is also for a complex sentence. So it is a complex compound sentence. Are we now sure the kind of sentence structures that we have used and how we have linked the information in between the sentences, rather than just using however additionally and this and that? Okay. Now, I'm not saying they are wrong. They are completely all right. But as I mentioned, you don't have much to do with vocabulary. And that is how you can enhance your score. Okay. Perfect. Now we are at the end of the session because this was the only task we were going to be discussing, because we were going to be spending some time on analyzing the task, and we did that today. We will not repeat anything about analyzing when we will be taking the session on Monday. That is the reason, if there are any questions, you guys can ask. Okay. Though I would definitely be taking your doubts in the beginning of the session, but still, if there are any questions or anything, you can ask them. On Monday, we will complete one combination chart, and then I would take one individual task. 2 tasks will be done on Monday.
Ma'am, how much ratio for these 2 tasks there is for task 1 and task 2? That's 50-50 or 60-40?
No. 33, your 30.3% score comes from task 1. Okay. And rest of the score
Okay.
comes from your writing task 2.
Okay,
Out of 9
okay.
marks. Okay.
Okay.
Yes. Let me just write it above. Anyone else having any questions? Yes, Harpreet, go ahead.
Ma'am, but I think that the task 1 is for 3 bands and the rest of the task 2.
We don't talk about scores or anything. Just we know the weightage is 33.3% and 66.6%. Yes,
Right.
that is basically for your task 2.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
And we are doing a combination like pie chart and the table on Monday, right?
Monday, yes. One combination and one individual task.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. So obviously on Renu, in the actual test, in case you're taking the computer-based test, you would be having a word counter. So you don't need to worry about counting words. In case you're taking pen and paper test, as I mentioned the other day, you can just take average number of words in one sentence, then count the number of sentences. For example, my one sentence is having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. 10 words are there in one sentence. Okay. Now, don't worry about these kind of sentences. When I'm counting, I would not even count these kind of sentences at that time. So I would say 1, let's say 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. So if I count till here, I have 100 words. But I have not counted these sentences, which are shorter. Okay, because this just to be on safer side. Because if this sentence is having 10 words, it doesn't mean that this sentence is also going to be having 10 words. It could be less than that as well, right? So in order to be safe, we just take average of one sentence, then eliminate sentences like these while counting the number of sentences, and then we take the average if you're doing it on a paper. Are we clear how to count the number of words when you are taking the test on a paper? In the computer base, you don't need to worry about word counter is there.